Barbies4Life by Xtrole. Note, I consider this story to be fan fiction. Also, this is just a casual reading of this story, and there may be reading errors that happen. Chapter 1. Hello, my name is Cran. I have joined a writing club, and if I don't come up with a story, then I will not seem cool to the other members of the club. I must seem cool to them. I simply must. And so, I'm gonna write a story to get my cool cred up. They say that it doesn't matter how good the story is. I just have to come up with something. Okay, so I'm thinking that I have to have Barbies in the story, because girls won't like the story unless there are Barbies in it. I also have to have farting jokes in the story, because guys only like stories that have farting jokes in it. So, farting Barbies? Sounds good. Now, it seems that this might put me into fan fiction's territory, and I'm gonna call this fan fiction just to be safe. Okay, time to start writing. So, a Barbie named Beauty was getting dressed one day, and suddenly she farted. As the smell wafted up to her nostrils, she was very unhappy because she didn't like it, and so she called up her Barbie friend, who was named Beast, and she asked him to meet up with her quick. He raced over to her house, and the fact that he was farting a lot as he ran helped him go faster. When he arrived at her abode, he said, "Hey, Butte, what's up?" She began crying, and she informed him that she had farted earlier on and not liked the smell of it. Suddenly, she farted again, and her face reddened in embarrassment. He had heard the fart, and so he decided to see if it smelled bad or not. Once the smell reached his nostrils, he pondered for a second and said, "Sounds great to me." And then he confessed that he too had been farting earlier that day. "You want to smell my farts too?" he asked, and she sighed and said that she may as well. Beast farted, and Beauty did not like how his fart smelled. It actually smelled pretty similar to how her fart had smelled. And so she decided to just tell him that his fart smelled like her fart, which was still truthful, but was less harsh than telling him that his fart smelled bad. "Thanks," he said. "I'm honored to have my farts compared to yours. By the way, you want to go on a date?" "Sounds good to me," Beauty said, but then she paused and said, "Are we exclusive now, or are we still considering other people while we date?" Beast paused and said, "You know what? F dating. How about we get married? Closed marriage. Just you, me, and our farts." Beauty wasn't sure about the farts part, but getting married did seem a lot less confusing and chaotic than dating, and so she said, "Should we go find a religious leader to pronounce us wife and husband then?" And Beast said, "Sounds good to me," and the two of them set off in search of a religious leader. They soon ran into an imam, and Beauty said, "Mr. Imam, please, will you pronounce us husband and wife?" The imam nodded solemnly and said, "Do you two take each other to be wife and husband? And Beauty and Beast both said, I do. Very good, the Imam said. You are now husband and wife. The Imam looked like he was about to say something else, but then he suddenly heard them fart and said, Did you two just fart? We sure did, Beast said happily, as Beauty's face reddened in embarrassment. Well, I suppose that it is a natural thing that our bodies do, the Imam said, but I do have important matters to attend to, and so I must leave. May your marriage be blessed, and may Allah guide you both as you make your way through life. Beauty and Beast thanked the Imam, and they headed off to go on a date. When they reached the local cafe, a waitress greeted them, and they heard her fart. Sorry about that, she said. Can I take your order? It's okay, Beauty said, even though she felt like she was about to throw up because the fart smelled so bad. We just got married, Beast said cheerfully, and the waitress got a very happy look on her face, and she said, I'll make you a deal. If you can convince the waiter over there to marry me, then your order is free. Beauty and Beast agreed to the deal, and so the waitress winked at them and left so that the waiter would have to take their order. When the waiter reached them, he said, Hello, may I take your order? And then he farted. Beauty did not like the smell of the fart, but she bravely managed to say, We'd both like today's special. Also, Beast and I just got married. Nice, the waiter said, and Beast said, Thanks, we're very glad that we decided to take the plunge. Then Beauty added that that waitress over there seems cute. Maybe you two should get married. I don't know, the waiter said. Maybe. And he walked off. Soon the waitress brought Beast and Beauty their orders and said that the waiter had proposed to her. That means that your food is free, she said happily, and Beauty and Beast grinned and thanked her for the free food. Just then, a huge monster Barbie walked by the cafe and farted through the window as he passed. The fart smelled so bad that everyone passed out and didn't wake up for a while. While they were all passed out, the huge Barbies grabbed them all and put them into a little cage. These shall make good pets, the huge Barbie said, and the huge Barbie farted again and then began walking towards the castle that he lived at with his wife. I said to myself, I guess that's probably good for chapter 1. Not gonna lie, the story might not exactly be the best tale ever, but it at least gives me a story to be able to present to the other writers. Plus, the tale's just getting started. It'll get more interesting as the story goes on, hopefully. And so I printed what I had, and I decided that I'd write more of it up the next day. Chapter 2. When Beauty woke up, she saw that she was in a nice-looking room that had a poster of 2 hot Barbies hanging on the wall. She gazed at the picture and wondered if her and Beast were as hot as the 2 Barbies in the poster. Then she began wondering where Beast was and why he was in this room. And so she exited the room and saw that there were other rooms too. She opened a door to a room and peered inside of it. Beast was in there, and he was still passed out. Okay, so the question about where Beast was had been answered, but the question of how they'd gotten where they were was still unanswered. Beauty exited Beast's room and walked through the hall and then ended up in a kitchen. A kitchen that had lots of food in it. Yum. Wait, she should make Beast breakfast in bed. That would be a nice thing to do for her spouse. And so she began pulling out different foods and mixing them together and creating a tasty concoction. Then she created juice from some fruit too. And then she heard a voice say, "Smells good," and she turned and saw that it was the waiter. "Didn't realize you were here," she said. "I'm making Beast some breakfast in bed." "Good idea," the waiter said. "I'll make some food for Dove, too." And before long, there was enough food and drinks prepared that both Beauty and the waiter had yummy-looking meals to bring to their spouses in bed. The waiter went into Dove's room, and Beauty went into Beast's room, and Beauty found that Beast was awake. "Where am I?" Beast said, and Beauty shrugged and said, "I don't know, but I brought you some breakfast in bed." "Thanks," Beast said, and he happily kissed Beauty, and the two of them began eating breakfast together. As they were eating, the waiter knocked on the door, and they said that he could come in. "Dove's not awake yet," he said, "but I'm head right back to her so that I'll be there when she wakes up. I just wanted to keep you two posted." Beauty and Beast nodded and said that his plan sounded good, and then they got back to eating. Once they finished eating, they kissed again, and then they went over to Dove's room to see if she had woken up yet. It turned out that she still hadn't, and so they began playing some Chinese checkers with the waiter. Before the game had concluded, they heard a voice say, "Hawk? Beauty? Beast? Where are we? And why does it smell so good in here?" "Beauty and I cooked up breakfast for you and Beast," Hawk said proudly, and Dove grinned and said, "Thanks." Then Dove and Hawk began eating their breakfast, and Beauty took Beast over to her room and asked if he thought that the Barbies on the poster were hotter than they were. "Everyone's beautiful and hot in their own way, babe," he said cheerfully, and Beauty beamed in delight and said, "I agree," and then the two of them walked over to the living room and began watching a Barbie movie. At first, they just sat next to each other during the movie, but Beast eventually pretended to yawn and placed one of his arms around Beauty's shoulder as the arm came down. Beauty happily accepted the gesture and nestled into her husband's embrace. Then Dove and Hawk joined them in the living room and sat on the other couch so that they could watch the movie too. "It's our first double date," Dove said cheerfully, and the others grinned and nodded in happy agreement. Then the roof suddenly flew off of the house that they were in, and a giant female Barbie looked down at them and said, "I'm so glad to see that all of you are enjoying yourselves. My husband really does know how to find us great pets." And then the roof lowered back down, and the house was sealed again. Are we just in a fancy cage?" Dove asked in a confused tone of voice, and then Dove, Hawk, Beauty, and Beast all farted at once. "Not the farting again," Beauty said exasperatedly, and the four of them all hurried out of the living room to escape the smell. Once they got to the dining room, they all saw that there were cans of Barbie soda on the table, and so they each grabbed one and opened it up. They did a toast, and then they all took sips of the soda. Then Beauty said, "So, do y'all think that we're trapped inside of this house as pets of giant Barbies?" And Beast said, "Only one way to find out." And Hawk nodded and said, "Yup, we're gonna have to try and leave this house and see if we're locked inside of it or not." Chapter 3. Beauty's Point of View. "That makes sense," Dove agreed, and she led the rest of us around to search for the exits to the house. The first exit door that we found was locked from the outside, and so we couldn't go through it. Then Beast got a big grin on his face and said, "I bet I could bash my way through it." I laughed and said, "I bet you could too, Hercules, but maybe we should find out if there are any unexpected exits before resorting to breaking things." "Whatever you say, babe," he said, and then Dove led the search for more doors. Before finding another door, we found a window that looked like it might be big enough to climb through. Hawk tried opening the window, but it wouldn't budge. "We should be able to break the window's glass if we need to, right?" Hawk said, and the rest of us nodded and agreed that was an option if we had no other way to exit the house. Then Dove led us around again, and we found another door. This door opened, and we all stepped out into a backyard. "We're free," I said excitedly, but Dove looked around and said, "Unfortunately, it looks like this backyard may be trapping us just as much as the inside of the house was." I looked around too, and I found that she seemed to be correct. In fact, there was a high wall blocking our exit that didn't seem to have any doors in it. "Maybe we could climb the wall," Beast suggested, and so he and Hawk began to climb the wall as Dove and I stared up at them. Their muscles looked really sexy as they climbed the wall, and I mentioned this to Dove, and she giggled and said that she'd noticed the same thing. We both had really hot husbands, that was for sure. Soon the two of them reached the top of the wall, and we saw them looking out past it. Then Hawk turned around and said, "Unfortunately, the ground is really far down, and it doesn't look like climbing all the way down to the ground is possible. Just give us a minute, though, and we'll try," Beast said, and he and Hawk then disappeared on the other side of the wall. Dove and I began getting a bit worried, and so we tried climbing the wall too, and we were able to climb the wall. When we reached the top of it, we looked down and saw that Beast and Hawk were on their way back up. When they reached the top of the wall, Hawk said, "It looks like this house is on a big table that's held up by one big leg that's in the center of it." "Yup," Beast agreed, "which means that we'd have to somehow make it to that center leg of the table in order to climb the rest of the way down, and I don't see how we're going to be able to do that." "Maybe if we made a big rope, we could climb down," Dove suggested, and I nodded, but added that it'd have to be a really long rope, though. We're very high above the ground. "Worth getting to work on, though, for sure," Hawk said. "If we have enough rope building supplies, maybe we can pull it off." "For sure," Beast agreed, "though at the moment I could really go for a swim in the swimming pool that's in the backyard after all of that exercise. Dove, Hawk, and I all eagerly agreed that trying out the swimming pool was a good idea, and so we began climbing down the backyard's wall so that we could change into swimwear and go swimming. Chapter 4. Once they finished climbing down the wall, they all went to the rooms that they'd woken up in, and they searched the rooms for swimwear. It turned out that all of the rooms had swimwear in them, and there were several different options, too. Beast saw that there was an American flag themed swimwear, and there was also hunting, mudding, gaming, and sporting themed swimwear. After thinking a bit, Beast put on the sporting themed swimwear, and then he went out to the swimming pool. Beauty saw that there was rainbow themed swimwear, and there was also swimwear that had outer space, mystery, music, and roller coaster themes. She thought for a bit and ended up going with the roller coaster themed swimwear, and then she headed out to the pool. Dove saw that there was water park themed swimwear, and there was also book, biking, superheroine, and surfing themed swimwear. She pondered a bit and ended up going with superheroine swimwear, and then she raced off towards the swimming pool. Hawk saw that there was chef-themed swimwear, and there was also racing, golf, dinosaur, and holiday-themed swimwear. He considered a bit and ended up going with the racing-themed swimwear, and then he too raced out to the swimming pool. Now, the four of them were in the backyard again, and they were all ready to swim. Before entering the swimming pool, of course, they all complimented each other on their excellent swimwear choices. The swimming pool had a high diving board and was pretty deep, and so they all decided to make their first splash into the swimming pool from the high dive. Who wants to go first? Dove asked, and Beast and Hawk both said, me, at once. Rock, paper, scissors, Beauty suggested, and the others all nodded that this was fair. And so, Beast and Hawk played rock, paper, scissors, and it turned out that they had both chosen paper. They tried again, and they both chose rock. The third round, Beast chose rock, and Hawk chose scissors, and this meant that Beast had won. "Wanna do best out of 3?" Hawk said hopefully, and Beast said, "Oh, fine," and the two of them did a fourth round. In the fourth round, Hawk did scissors again, and Beast did paper, and this meant that it was time for round 5. In round number 5, both of them chose rock, and so it was time for round number 6. They both chose scissors in round number 6, and so it was time for round number 7. In round number 7, Beast did scissors again, and Hawk did rock, and this meant that Hawk had turned the tables. "Best out of 5? Beast asked mischievously, and Hawk laughed and agreed to do best out of 5. Beast and Hawk continued playing rock, paper, scissors for several hours, and eventually it got too dark to play anymore. While they'd been playing, Dove and Beauty had snuck into the pool that had been swimming around and having fun in the water. Hawk and Beast decided to join Beauty and Dove in the pool for a little bit, even though their rock, paper, scissors playing had taken so long that the high dive didn't seem like a great idea anymore because it was so dark out. As they crept towards Beauty and Dove's voices and managed to get into the shallow part of the pool without any problems. And I'm going to repeat that last paragraph because it wasn't as, it was and so. Okay, and so they crept towards Beauty and Dove's voices and managed to get into the shallow part of the pool without any problems. Well, I guess we'll have to try the high dive tomorrow, Hawk said with a chuckle, and Dove laughed and said, I can't believe how long you two played rock, paper, scissors for. When men are intent on playing rock, paper, scissors, nothing can stand in their way, Beast declared, and Beauty chuckled and said, except for the dark. And Beast laughed and said, well, yes, except for the dark. The four of them spent a little while longer in the shallow part of the pool, and then they finally decided to go back into the house and eat some food before getting some sleep. They were all a bit tired, and so they just ate some fruit and cereal instead of spending a long time cooking something up. Then there was the question of whether they'd go to their own rooms or whether Dove would share a room with Hawk and Beauty would share a room with Beast. They ended up deciding that sharing a room seemed to make sense for the newlywed couples, but then there was the question of which rooms to use. Should Beauty and Beast sleep in Beauty's room or Beast's room? And should Dove and Hawk sleep in Dove's room or Hawk's room? They ended up flipping coins to decide, and the coins had soon determined that Beast and Beauty would sleep in Beauty's room, and Dove and Hawk would sleep in Hawk's room. Then everyone said good night to each other, headed to the rooms that the coins had decided that they'd be going to, and it was time for some sleep. Beauty and Beast shared a kiss, and then got under the covers, snuggled up, and were soon fast asleep. Dove and Hawk did a little bit more than snuggling up and kissing, but we'll just go ahead and respect their privacy and allow them to keep the wonderful memories of that night of romance to themselves.